Good evening, everybody. We are going to work on some rough turn bowls, I think. I don't really feel like putting up with much dust tonight, so we'll just do some nice dust-free stuff. And we have quite a few of them to do. And we'll get it set up here and make some stuff fly. Hope everybody's having a good holiday weekend. At least it's a holiday here, put it that way. We have quite a few of them to do. I think we'll start out with the smaller ones that are all, these are natural edge ones. They're all cherry. When I can find a hole. I want to get through the cambium layer on this one. We need to. There we go. Need to get through that bark layer and the cambium layer so that we don't have an issue. It looks like the nail hole. We want the drive center to get a good bite. Otherwise, we'd have things flying the wrong way, which we don't want. We use a 4-prong drive center. A wooden mallet to drive it in. Right above the leg on my outfeed table, which is quite heavy, quite secure. Otherwise, it would be down on the floor. I have a tendency not to do it that way because I don't want to bend over. And we may have to go sharpen a couple of gouges right off the bat too. I should just sharpen all 3 of them while we're at it. We're way too close. And what did I do to my screen over here? There we go. As you can see, when you drive it in nice and solid like that, it's sitting on the 4-prong drive center. Of course, it's only a small, not a very big bowl. I think these are about 7 inches, something like that. Put the plastic around them because I got these ready probably about a week ago. So if I didn't put the plastic around, they would have already cracked in a week's time. Just a little note of caution when you do that, don't forget about them. You could walk into your shop or wherever you would keep them at, find out there's a bit of an aroma coming about that you probably really don't want to smell. Yeah, I didn't cut that very straight, which is probably good probability. And drop it down just a shade there. Tighten things up nice and tight. We'll go over here and sharpen these three gouges quick. And then we'll get busy. So, grinder sitting on the spindle gouge, I think. Didn't use it that, well, no, I did use it. That was last week when we did the Icuponis. I haven't turned anything since. So yeah, it's the right place. It shouldn't take much. Should be like once around on each side. It should be good for that one. Standard swept back grind. Moving a little too quick there in that one spot. A little too hesitant on going around the corner. A little like beaks down in there, and I don't want them. That makes that become rather aggressive. It really doesn't look like, I don't think I used that one, so. Now we're ready. Ready as we will ever be, so should be able to start overhead. Got to get this outside round and true first. That center post as close to the work area as I can. Start out nice and slow, standing off to the side. Bring the speed up to where we get a vibration. These small ones is usually not too bad. So that's going to let us start out at about 19 or 900 RPMs, 1900, 900. Exploratory cut. We've cut completely across on the tops. Like we're taking a little bit more off on that side than this side. So my movement earlier probably wasn't necessarily a good movement. We'll move that over a little bit. We'll make another cut and see where we're at. We're still not going to be locked into anything at this point. We'll get rid of some of the bottom, screw that up and all that good stuff. This is cherry if I didn't fail to remember that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We're pretty even there. We should be even here because it was earlier. Yep, we're good. So now we can flatten off the bottom, get us a tenant, or at least an idea where the tenant's going to be. And we can go from there. And this is probably not going to be That's not too bad. Widen that one out a bit. So we'll flatten this out, put our markings on for a tendon. Once we get that done, we should be able to pick up the speed a little bit. This would be the only thing left that wouldn't be in balance would be right in here. So I should, yeah, clean. It's a little bit of dark stuff in the bottom of this. This is towards the center of the tree. I probably should actually just go ahead and get rid of that. That just looks like something it seemed like it was seems like it's a little soft in there. So that's probably a little bit of a rot in the center. Now things are in balance. We can get our speed up to where we want it. Make things a little quicker, a little easier. See if that got us below most of it. Probably going to be a little bit of it left in the tennant, but I think I'm good with that part of it. It's just going to make a little shallower bowl, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that because we're still probably at 3 inches deep by about 6.5, something like that. So if we stick with that 50% rule, that's about where we want to be. Now, the question is, how big of a tennant can we get? This is only going to be a rough turn piece. Can always take more wood off. So we'll go for the bigger one. Put our tool rest across at about 45 degrees, something like that. I want to get rid of this corner, and then we can start making our shape. Lots of stopping and starting on these smaller ones, especially. Try and stay away from moving the tool rest when the lathe is running. Especially something that has wings, corners, that very easily smack your fingers. And there's little pieces of bark coming off of there. Not a surprise. Cherry seems to be one of them that's very seldom you ever seem to get a piece of cherry to keep the bark on. So we'll make our tennant. Make it a little bit bigger than that line. And we truly don't need all that corner there. You really all of that. That will actually go down through the center of the chuck. So you can probably leave that alone. Shape's okay. That foot's probably a little bit too big for the final piece anyhow. But we'll leave this probably an inch or so thick. Since I got two of them ready, we're just going to do our between center work. And then we'll go do the inside of these two. Actually, I think there's about 4 of them this size. So maybe we'll just do all 4 of the little ones. They go pretty quick, as you'll see. So we'll do a little bit of alignment right off the bat. Just makes it a little easier. Not enough yet. There also is not a point in the live center. So allow me to move it more freely to get what I want. It actually has a little crack and chip right there. Back down to slow speed. I'm doing pretty good. For an old man. I don't think that was quite enough. Took some there. Not enough there. Have to move that a little bit. Top side looks pretty good. Bark disappeared, but it was cutting in there. Move it just a little bit that way. And I think we'll be good. One more little lonely little cut. Now I'm going to give her a better idea. I cut on a little bit of a downward angle on that rather than trying to go straight where it cuts more off of that. That looks pretty even. Yep. It's been a while since I've done any of these. It's kind of amazing what certain things you remember to do well, I guess. We'll back to straighten up the bottom. have our sharp edge. It's kind of suspicious looking there again. It's almost there's already a hint of a crack right in there. So there's no real reason to, if it's cracked there now and it's wet, it'll just be a bigger crack. This is sort of a small log to start with. So I tried to cut right down through the tip of it, which I don't always get exactly right. We're definitely going to leave that brown streak in there and hope for the best. So it's about the same size as the last one, so we're gonna stick with the little bit bigger diameter tennant. Once again, now we're in balance, so we can turn the feet up, make life a little easier. It's easier just to kind of do a little bit of a pull cut in there because the handle, right now the handle's up tight against the tail shot. There's those pieces of bark coming off just like the last one. For me, it's a little flat up in that area. So we're going to change a little bit and switch over to the. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually sort of, I show the people when I teach a class that. I said, but there, I don't have the tailstock in the road for them. I use a faceplate for them. And we don't do any natural edge because the owner won't let me do natural edge because it would have to be green wood. Um, yeah, it is inherently dangerous. You'll only ever touch that one side over on the far side once or twice, and it's not gonna work. You'll pretty much get that instilled in your brain not to do that. So that's sort of a better looking shape. Keep it sort of nice outflowing. That's the other thing I always tell people is to do what you feel is safe and what works best for you. Has always been my opinion. That's sort of what I've been taught from day one is if you don't feel comfortable doing something in the way that somebody else may do it, then just don't do it. That's a prime example. If you're not comfortable with doing that, then just don't do it. It's not a whole lot of that brown streak stuff left, which is good because I had a little suspect there. Like I say, these little ones are nice and quick and easy to do. Final shape is going to have to come down and around more. Tenon will be smaller, or the foot will be smaller. The tenon probably will be the foot on these when they're done. At least that's usually how I do them. And what do we have? We have two. Yeah, I need to get these done. Like I say, they've been sitting around wrapped up like that for a week. There's a, this is a basement. It's still sort of dry. There's the humidifier running. Go grab the other one. No, I didn't bring them both. So we'll just do four outsides and then we'll flip around and do the inside. The inside's just about as quick as that's the outside. Might have to clean up a little bit of the mess, but I love my Pennsylvania cherry though, without a doubt. Plastic off, a better idea. Seems a little deeper. Also, I didn't have some flats on the end, but that's okay. It won't be flat for long. More importantly, where are we at on our high points? Off a bit that direction. Yeah, so am I. I'm in Pennsylvania. Am I always trying to scam you out of money, though? Didn't do a very good job with the chainsaw on that one. Not unusual. Yeah, it's gonna want to rattle pretty quick. This means we gotta go slower. McKeesport. McKeesport is in western Pennsylvania, out around Pittsburgh. Am I thinking right? Okay. Well, I'm just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So yes, I know. Mm, not close enough. This one is not though. Still have a tiny little bit of chainsaw mark there. Oh, one more lonely little cut. We'll be good to go. Oh, okay. Well, I'm actually in Mechanicsburg, so for me to get to Frederick's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. It still looks like that's way off. Why? Oh, is that right? You lived in Frederick that long? Wow. Are you still working or are you retired? It's sort of like this other ones. A little bit of a, I don't know if I didn't get all the pith out of there, I think. And it's a little bit thick. And get just a little bit of speed out of it, get rid of this corner, because I did move it after the fact, so it's not running true up in this area. Let's get rid of most of that. Not all though. I think I better. I'm looking at is this brown streak that runs down across here. Also a bit of a crack going across there. I don't want that left behind in the tenant. We'll get rid of some more. Should be able to bring the speed up now. We got rid of all the really out of whack stuff. I was gonna say, where'd that piece of bark? Oh, right there. Like I said, I do leave the bark on this, but the likelihood of it being there in 8 months or so from now is probably slim to none. It's always, it would be nice if it would, but it usually doesn't. We're going to reduce this by about another 8. See what that looks like down here. That looks like we have all clean wood. So a little bit of that brownish area in there that's not necessarily what you want to see, but mm, yeah, the wonders of the steel mills, right? And of course, now they want to bring them all back. Actually, what my grandfather did for a living way back when. He actually, I think, worked most of his life, or some of his life anyhow. The Harrisburg Steel Mill. I don't really remember whether they actually made steel or just sort of converted it to from all ingots to something else. It's way too little for that to figure out that number. Okay, well, that's good. Are you still painting, or do you find a different profession? Mm, let's get our tenant on here and see whether we like this or not. It looks too straight-sided. It is. We'll just give it a little bit of a sort of OG shape down in there. And so that eventually will be the foot. There's lots of pieces of bark are coming off. Yeah, it'll all come off on these. For sure. I think it looks better. That'll allow me, once it's dry, to be able to take that down, bring that corner down around where the shapes that I would want. Make that work. I think that'll work for a rough one. I'll leave these probably about an inch thick, maybe even a little thicker. I'm not lacking in any way, shape, or form of bowls that are dry and ready to be returned. But as a wood turner, everybody wants to keep turning your wood, so you almost need to keep up with a lot of the wet stuff. Otherwise, you have firewood before you even get started. Fixing door. A welding business that's called Fixing Door? That's an that's an interesting name. How did you how did you come up with Fixing Door for a name of a? I assume this is a welding type business. Maybe I'm assuming something I shouldn't assume, but we're still around. Definitely didn't do a very good job on this one. The job is also getting dull. We're going to try the little micro bevel one. I never really tried that on the piece of rough wood. It should work just fine. The same bevel angle. And it's sharp where the other one is getting dull. Now around. Looks like we have one more little move to make. And that's quite a little bit of flat there, but this should be okay. That lines up. These two do not. So we're there to there. I moved quite a bit actually. There's some turning clubs down here in Frederick, right? My memory serves me correct. Oh, okay. I don't know a whole lot about Frederick, other than I used to drive through it fairly often. I'm a soon to be retired truck driver, so I would go through Frederick fairly often in the younger days, anyhow. Okay, this is much, much cleaner than the others. Once again, our tenant. Balanced. Yeah. Oh, I bet that was an adventure. That's probably an adventure just to get in. I didn't have to worry about them paying the bill, though. Maybe. The tenant looks huge for that one. You do interior, exterior, doesn't make any difference as far as doors goes. Mhm. We'll do the same as with this one as we did the last one. Just sort of make a little bit of an OG shape down in there. Just assume that's going to be part of the final design because it's a little bit too thick for the diameter. Gouge is also getting rather dull. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, especially seeing as how you were basically out of a job at one point to end up with a new career and be able to make something of it. There's so many people that are not. They can live with that. So now we can flip these around and do the insides. Definitely going to go sharpen before we start the inside. Yeah, the wood turn out. I started turning somewhere around 18 years ago, maybe a little better than that. It sort of started before I switched jobs, um, and went down the sort of the truck driving career, which was with well, it still is. It's with UPS. Sort of the same scenario that the company I worked for was basically downsizing, going out of business type scenario, and had the opportunity for them to foot the bill to get my CDL. And I stuck with that for a little over 17 years worth. I was at the other place 28, and now we're 17 at UPS. But that's we're getting about ready. We're going to retire here in about another month. So then we'll sort of get on a new path, I guess you'd say. Retirement, be able to play and do whatever I want, sort of, somewhat. My son-in-law just asked me yesterday if I thought I'd run out of things to do in retirement, and I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like you younger generation. There's a ton of stuff to do. There's actually a lot of different things that you could do that doesn't cost a ton of money to do, even.
I'm like, you haven't walked down behind my shed and have a retaining wall. I said, there's nothing but wood everywhere. So I could probably spend the next 6 months turning, and maybe I'd make a half decent sized dent in the amount of wood that's sitting around. Still working on this thing of freehand sharpening. I'm not sold on it for sure, but I do like the straight wing gouge, and I did find that I could actually grind that because I was using a 40 degree, 40 to 40 as they want to call it, and I had somebody show me how to grind that. We're going to be strictly inside, so let's go over to there. Well, it was jig allows you to me it's just easier for me anyhow. Some of them people like to talk about not being a proper wood turner and everything else. If you can't grind your tools freehand, and it's like, well, you also sell tools, so you're trying to get people to try and learn how to grind without using a jig, so that they go burn through more tools and buy more tools from you. I'm like, I got the game. Right. Well, what I just use is I also have the Wolverine. I don't have a second grinder yet. Haven't decided to buy one, mainly because I don't necessarily know where to put it. I started out with the Wolverine. There's nothing wrong with that. The one on the right side of my grinder is the woodcut one. Got that from the guy down in Texas. Cindy Dro's his friend. He was running a little special, and I like the um, a bit low. I like the holder piece of it better than the Wolverine, because if I go to move that one, it has little notches that makes it more. Well, the platform, if you do any amount of stuff that you're grinding on the platform, that's actually a Stuart Batty platform, which I always said I wouldn't spend the money on. I was down at the SWAT symposium. I'm gonna say probably 3 years ago, maybe, and that Woodworkers Emporium, which is out in Las Vegas, they were there, and they used to handle all that stuff of his. Actually, they sort of bought at one point. I guess they actually sort of bought him out, is what it amounted to. And I think they sort of since have, not sure whether they're totally out of business. I know they went to mail order. Last time I was in Las Vegas, they were not. They no longer had a store, but they were down there, and they had those platforms, which are really nice, um, for like about $125, somewhere thereabouts. And I walked past them, and I'm like, it's $125 for a platform that the Wolverine platform works okay, just needs flattened. you've never flattened yours, if you put a straight edge across it, being sort of a metal worker, you'd probably understand that you weld, it creates a bit of a hump in the middle, which one way sort of too lazy to grind it off or something or other. But there's some certain stuff that platform just does not do well. And it's mainly like some like curved scrapers or things like that where you may have to go up the side. Um, but I had somebody show me a fix for that, and it's just a matter of making it basically a wooden platform with some magnets on it to stick fast to the Wolverine platform, and it actually makes it nicer that you can swing the tool up and around more so than what you can on the standard platform. Gives you a bigger surface area. I'm very particular on when I'm doing any kind of wet wood is I try and stay around a 16th of an inch, give or take a little bit on wall thickness, and it works. It works quite well as far as I'm concerned. You lose you, you have less trouble with things cracking. Because I just put them in a paper bag and then they sit over on the shelf for the next 8 months to a year, or usually along about 8 months. Then I usually get them out at about 8 months or so, and then I just stack them up on top of one another with some little sticks of wood in down in. Another one of the mistakes you generally try and only make once, and just throw them up on the shelf and stack them one on top of the other. Come back a couple of weeks later or so to find out you can't get the two apart because it hasn't totally dried. It come out now into drier air than in the bag. That looks pretty good. It's a direction. Now you got to take a hammer and beat them apart. And that one is probably still a little thick or a little wider than it is. I don't want to say that. Can't talk today. So what I refer to, let's go back to that, over the head. This is something that Jimmy Clues taught me long ago. So it's 6 1/4 on this long side. So that means anything over that 3 inch mark is getting a little bit too deep. So when I do, see if I can show it from the side. So these curves are not a real true curve, but it's a green turn bowl. This will get shrunk down smaller. We'll take more off the bottom to make the curve right once it's dry. But if they're too deep, then you have more trouble getting a nice curve. At least that was his philosophy, and it works. I've always taught that if somebody shows you something that works, don't stick with what works. And once again, it's what works for you. This one is smaller yet, so it'll be more challenging yet to go get the curve in the bottom. I got the, yeah. So this is the 40-degree gouge. Not there, there. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of tools that you can make, mainly scraper type tools. I certainly wouldn't have the knowledge to do any kind of a gouge type tool, but the scraper type tools, and we're strictly pretty much working with wet wood today. Although you're saying that we'll get out the the bowl scraper, because you can buy that stuff on Amazon. Not that I necessarily know totally what I'm looking at. I do have an uncle that's a retired machinist, so when I told him some of the stuff that I was getting and using, he's like, "Well, yeah, they're all right. I mean, they're made for the metal working industry." And so they're just nothing but a fly cutter, which doesn't necessarily mean much to me. And I'm like, half decent steel, so it holds enough of an edge on a scraper to make me happy, or make it something I found that I like them. Once you, another one of them scenarios of a little bit of practice on using it, and some things maybe like what not to do. We're just about to the bottom of that one too. We did almost all that with the 40-degree. But the problem with the 40, when you go back into that 40-degree category, I can't go around this corner because I'll hit back here and not be able to get across the center. And this, the size of these are, you could probably actually go to more like 65 or even 70 degrees would make it easier to go across the bottom. But, oh, I even have another handle. And we have a burr. So, um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. Mine don't say too much about it. This is kind of a self-supportive kind of hobby in a way. I mean, I do turn almost all green wood. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one to go out and buy much wood. I do buy some wood at Woodcraft, but the main reason there is because they have some things of interest to me. And the other thing is, when you teach classes there, I'm an employee, so I get the super discount on things. And some of the, I've gotten some sapele and some different things there that I normally wouldn't really get a hold of. So there's one of the scrapers that I made. That's just your high-speed steel from Amazon. Pretty simple. A lot of grinding work back here to make the tang, but other than that, I mean, they seem to do all right, and they seem to hold an edge long enough. And when you watch enough dumb videos, especially Richard Raffin, he just loves the scrapers. That's where I had gotten like one first or second piece of steel that I got. And like I said, we're gonna leave them plenty thick, and they're wet. Waterline. Well, you know that. You work with enough greenwood. These are throwing water a little bit. It's not totally getting a bath. I do like the shear scraper one, which is this little guy. This one's thinner. It's only 8 millimeters thick. It's sort of the same radius edge, but I've also rounded this edge. Not necessarily professional looking rounded over, but a little bit of patience with the grinder, and you can make a relatively smooth edge corner, rounded corner down there so that you can put it up on its edge and slide across the tool rest. And that works really well on the outside, or if it's big enough, you could even use it on the inside of a bowl. Um, so yeah, I've found that they're pretty useful. It's like anything else. You do something long enough, and you usually can figure out what you're doing right with it, what you're doing wrong with it. Those traditional scrapers, although they will let you know what you're doing wrong in one big happy hurry. You do you're gonna have that little bit of a downward angle. I don't too often. I usually take one or two of them along when I teach these classes, but I don't unless it's somebody that has some. I had a couple people that come with a fair amount of experience. Yeah, you got that right. Um, the one guy I was explaining it to, like I said, he was there because he wanted. I did a winged bowl class. One of these little guys that looks like that, square wings, and it's still a bowl, and it's thin. They do, and of course, I'm sure if you ask one of them tool manufacturers or tool gurus, so to speak, or whatever, they would say, well, they won't hold an edge. And I'm like, excuse me, that thing holds an edge a lot longer than what you think it would. Now, when you do the negative rake scrapers, they do not, because it's such a thin edge. I've just ground it around 60 degrees on this. If you watch Richard Raffin and Thomas Slavic or whatever his name is from over in Croatia, that just mimics everything Richard does, theirs is ground at more like a 45. I'm like, at that 60, if you make a mistake, it doesn't release until it gets to the bottom of that bottom part of the bevel, so it's more than aggressive enough. It just has to be slightly above center. It does do a good job for the most part. Anyhow, put it that way. Like anything else, the more you use it, the more you understand what it will do and what it will not do. I think we gotta take more out of the bottom. This is this one that we sort of did a little bit of a redesign on. So there's a tenant. So yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, Richard. Yeah, yeah, he is entertaining. Some of the things he does kind of makes you concerned on who's somebody that doesn't understand what he's doing and why he's doing it, how he's doing it. Probably could end up kind of like wearing some wood, eating some wood. Like I say, it works for him, works for both of them, and he's very fast. I mean, he was a production turner, so that's why they learn to do some of the stuff that they do. Because if you're putting food on the table or paying your bills by how fast you can work, why, you're gonna take every little shortcut you can find. At least I think I would. And if that scraper, just like there, and I can see where, I don't remember who, I've taken several classes every year. I shouldn't say many. Um, but some of the people talk about the scrapers and the fact that if you get used to using them, then you won't learn to use your gouges properly and all this and that. And I'm like, okay, but if it makes my life easier, then that's what we're going to do. And as you see on the bottom of these bowls, I mean, it makes it quite quick and easy. Now that one there didn't cut quite as cleanly as the first one, but if I go back, when I went back and made a lighter cut, more gentle, and then it cut it clean. And for me, the other thing that I found works quite well for me. Not quite there. Yeah, I mean, I do for the most part too. I don't like to do any kind of production work. I've done a little bit in the past, and it was no fun. If you're on Instagram and that and see those couple guys from across the pond there that just, they're making the same thing, almost the same thing every day, day in and day out. It's like, no, not for me. I would get very bored with it. The only time that I really did any truly production work, I had about 20 or 25 of these little figurines. My wife is a decorative painter, and this lady asked me if I'd make them because wherever she was getting them from, quit making them. And I'm like, well, send them to me, and I'll, come up with a price. and make one or two. And before I come up with a price, I'm like, I'm gonna make a couple of them. I mean, time is money, so I don't want to make something that's relatively inexpensive as far as materials went and that. And it's like, I want to make sure that you're getting this done in the time frame. Yeah, well, so I was done with M40. I didn't I didn't need to go back for more. Actually, it hasn't been too terribly long ago. The one lady that my wife's friends with said, would he have time to make more of them? And she said, nope, because she knew I wasn't very overly thrilled with making them. And there again, these painters and all them people. I mean, you kind of understand it. I mean, you had a business. You're making money off the back of somebody else, really. A lot of times, you're doing the work and you're making money off of maybe you're making money off other people's materials or something like that. Well, that just, you know, I understand that and I get that. Oops. But that's how you're at. When you use them scrapers right and they have the burr on them, as you can see, I've used it now on two of them, and that burr doesn't feel like it's any different. Of course, this is wet wood, but this, my wife said I had to keep my mouth shut with this lady, but we got them done and ready to go, and it's like, oh yeah, just you know, send us the address of where you live, and they'll be on their merry little way, and you get to pay that bill as well. But and then she turned around, my wife, and said, "Oh, no, this can go here, 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 and here." And it's like we ship this stuff. I mean, it all come out of her money. But it's like we ship this stuff all over the place to other people for her, and I'm like, that's just not how I would want to do it. Revisit this little one here. Uh, One little guy, just as I have all four of them done. Hmm. Maybe I'll just let it go. I think it's consistent enough wall thickness. Mm, yeah, I think I'll let it go. Onward and upward. That's our four natural edge ones done. So I think what we'll do, I think I have two more, which are not going to be natural. They're just going to be a sort of a flat rim bowl, because the bark already done came off of these. So I think we'll just do them that way. Except I guess I should have. And normally we had a discussion woodcraft meeting. Like subject come up, but somebody I guess was looking at one of their inexpensive chucks that they have, and there was a picture of the woodworm screw, and of course these guys really doesn't even know what they are. So the owner's like, so you need to explain this to us. And I tried to, but I think a lot of it went over their head. Like I don't necessarily use one that overly much because there again, there's sort of a production kind of thing. Get a better point down in there than what I got though. My usual thing with the using the woodworm screw. Not sure if that's the right. No, see that says 3/8. It's got to be bigger than because I like using the one-way worm screw versus the. Well, I can probably use that one. This is the actual Vic. These are Vic Mark chucks, and this is actually the worm screw that comes with the Vic Mark chucks. Which is actually it's longer than the one-way one. Not that that matters. I don't think I think 3/8 is way too big for it. Yes. So that's always been half my battle is getting the right size drill bit to match them or get close enough to matching them. 3/8 is not what we want. So look at 11. Guess a real scientific kind of person would actually just measure the. Because I know if you get it to where it's really tight on this. No, come on. It's not even let me get the whole way in there on that sucker. Okay. 395. Or is that 295? Yeah, 290. 340. Let's try that. So, what size did we get? Of course, it has to be off of that. So, 21/64. Try that. Because I'll say, I mean, I don't have any trouble with them holding anything. Pretty deep enough. It's usually the fact of not being able to get them back off. It seems like it's threading on easy enough. Of course, I never really get them to thread on straight to go with it. go. Of course, I'm sure most of those guys would have put a backer plate or a spacer on there because that's too long of a worm screw for what you're using it for, I guess. At least that was always most of those people's philosophy that that would be too long. But just for the safety sake, we will bring the tailstock up, at least for now. This and definitely will throw some bark off. This is already coming off, but I couldn't get. That's the other wonders of the cherry. That the bark tears, but to tear the rest of it off is like almost impossible. But I don't like that. I don't want that bark flapping around there. There we go. Two things. I mean, that's a pretty good distraction for one, and also does not feel very nice on the fingers when it smacks your fingers coming around. I think I'll still start in my normal sort of way and come down from the top a little bit so I know where that's going to be first. Always helps to tighten the tool rest though. Nope, still not. Still big flat. Two big flats, really. Sure. I guess this would make more sense if it was directly overhead and see exactly what we're doing. I'm going to clean up a little bit of face up here so I know where it's going to end, or where it's round up there. That's good. Still not completely round there, but I want to get rid of this big chunky mass out here, which is definitely where it's going to release the bark. Also where our major part of our unbalance is at. we're not really cutting, or not really cutting blind down here. So when I'm able to look down through and see the sort of the ghost image down below. And it's just fun to make really nice big fat shavings too. Still have a little bark left. Also now have a flat area on the bottom. We're able to sneak past some of the vibration, or a lot of the vibration. Still some bark, okay, right there. And still some bark there. We got enough weight off of it, I think, now to get rid of the tailstock, which would it's definitely an advantage of using the worm screw on something like that. I wouldn't I wouldn't want to start from scratch with a piece that's out of balance like that, just on the worm screw. I mean, I see a lot of people do, but I don't I don't particularly care for the flying object. I guess now it would make more sense to go back there. But rest needs to come around just a little bit, so now I should be able to make sort of one swooping curve. Go back to our straight wing when C. I don't think we're still, no. Still have an area out in here that's not round. Still not round up there either. We're there. Still not quite there. That's a pretty piece of wood though. It's got some really nice color to it. We don't blow off the end, we don't blow it out. That should fuzz it up a little bit, but close enough there. Still not quite. A little bit of unroundness there, so to speak. And we'll stick with the bigger jaws. Another way to do that with these, since you don't have anything in the road, would be to put it on the tool rest, the left hand match up with the right. Except it's got to be up in the air a little bit. It took me like 10 minutes to try and explain that in a class when I showed somebody that one. I said, it's got to be up in the air. I was like, why not? Why? I said, because you're below center. And they had trouble grasping that part of what below center had to do with anything pertaining to what I was doing. But so it would be good to have a center point though, somewhere close to the center point, I guess. Oh, that's fine. That should work. Other than that one little tiny flat spot, tiny one there too. That's not going to make any major deal. We could get a better, definitely could get a better center point, probably with their pencil than you can anything else. Let's see if we drilled the right size hole. Come on, let go. There we go. I think that's the meal ticker for those. For the one-way worm screw, seems to be. But since that would make that easy enough, we'll just take that out. Get it there. Grain is running across, up and down that way. Once again, another one of them professionals said about keeping the grain running up and down with the jaws. Gives you a more uniform grip. It's another one of the things is like, never heard of that one, but I will say this much, it does work. They know what they're talking about, especially in wet wood. Probably. Okay. New Another one of Richard Raffin's famous lines is he uses a spindle gouge for almost everything because back in the day they were cheaper. But when he talks about the spindle gouges, he's also measuring the flute. Just so happens I do have one, and that be the one he would be talking about. Because he always says about this. A lot of times it's a 1/2 inch flute, so that's for us that would be a 5/8 inch spindle gouge. I have one of these that I bought many years ago, and maybe worn 1/8 of an inch off of the end of that if I'm lucky. Forward would be the direction of travel. And this top edge up a little bit more. Now, when I move the full rest, it's probably a little on the high side for that spindle gouge. Sharp corner. Yeah. He may like it, but I think I'll stick to my bowl gouges for that worldly duty. Mess with it a bit a different day on that. So let's leave this one more along about 1.25 inch area. So about another 1/8 of an inch off of there, maybe a little less. This is the 60-degree gouge, just straight wings rather than curved wings. It's also a 5/8 inch gouge if you care. Ooh, maybe we're gonna make the top a little smaller than that. I went a little straight too. That's always one of my downfalls is I went straight too far straight. Let's see if I can show you over in here. I have 1/16 of an inch gap there, and as I follow the wall down, I probably are 1/8 of an inch. So I've went straight. I went straight a little bit too long. So I'll just take a little bit more off the top. Sort of, let's see whether we got close, closer. Anyhow. Okay. Left a hump in there, which has to go because that's a thicker spot. But make it disappear into nothing down there. That should be close enough. I usually go inch and a half or so down each time each pass down through there. So we're pretty consistent the whole way down through there. Now, this is a log that I got a little while ago from. It's still plenty wet. I should probably stick it with a moisture meter to see how wet it is. So we're kind of into being lazy here. So we're just gonna grab our bowl scrape. We'll just come back in and finish it with that. You gotta keep the chips out of the road. You're using a scraper, but they're nice curly cute chips comes off of that, and that's you can take a little bit more out in there. Yeah. Keep working with this one. I want to try and bring this curve down around a little bit more rather than making another one. That's nice. Other than you got a little lump in the middle I need to take out. Does help to make the shape on the bottom for you better than a lot of times than what you can do with the gouge. Any amount of sanding that it can save you is worth the effort. Still getting tight right in that area, so that's good enough for this. Beautiful fine shavings come off. That's kind of the neat part. It also doesn't throw this. When you're using the bowl gouge, I have a mountain of chips over here all around the camera that I will have to clean up tonight, but I think that's good. Once again, it's a rough turning, but I make my rough turnings pretty much to the shape that I want and a nice consistent wall thickness. I'll make just a nice simple little, I think I started out at like 9 inches, something like that. So now we're down to about 8 1/4. So it dries in that. So 7 1/2, 7 3/4 maybe. Maybe 8 if we're really lucky. Another one. I think there's another one. I think I figured I would just do, yeah, let's just do it with a flat rim bowl. Probably would look okay as a natural edge. but there's already that's a crack in the bark. So the likelihood of that staying through the drying is probably pretty slim. I'd call it slim to none. Also has a little, maybe a little vermin friend there activity. Still a little bit of the pith there. So this will be a sort of a shallow kind of a bowl. We either get our pattern back out, or we get somewhere close to center. Scribe a line, go in 4 directions. This side has a bark on it, so it's not necessarily. So somewhere in about, right in about there is going to be where we're going to call it center. See how well we did. We'll be center eventually, that's for sure. And that's about where we're at. Definitely don't get too carried away on that one. It's not super thick. The lathe on the slow speed, or on some high speed pulley, doesn't have no power. It wanted right there, it actually wanted to stall it, sort of stall it out. That's tight. Just like before, get the calipers out of there so they don't go flying somewhere. We'll come right out here on this corner. This time we're not going to mess around with coming from the top. I'll sort of force it from the corner and go from there, which to me is really another good way of doing it. It forces you to kind of make decisions in a way along the way on shape. I'll switch to the shorter tool rest. There's that. That still's not going to let me get the. That's what to go straight across. So we get some a little bit of tailstock support anyhow, just to get started. Right on the corner. We're gonna have to go pretty slow. Start on the corner. It doesn't take long to get away from the tool rest. It'll have the same, well, it's the other half of the log. Should have the same, sort of the same character to it as the other one did. Get rid of the bark. Really beautiful curly shavings when it's strictly side grain like that. Below the bark in there, not there. Tailstock wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot to start with. Giving it support, but as you can see, kind of a lesson in a way. You see people doing things on that they want to post out there in the world for people to see. And it goes to show you that that bark had no real holding power in there in the center. Because as soon as I touched it with the tool in there, it broke it free. So you see so many people do like the natural edge stuff and things of that nature. And they want to maybe use a worm screw, or I've seen some people doing it with face plate, things like that. And it's like, you don't have a very good hold on something, but I guess they eventually figure out when something comes off and whacks them upside the head that it wasn't a grand idea how they were doing it, but always pays to try and go up through the vibration. Didn't think I was going to get there, and I didn't, but I'll just keep getting rid of some of this corner. You're getting at a weird angle out there and too far away from the tool rest, and it's not round. Still a big chunk of bark. Two big chunks of bark. Okay. Trying to see, there's a big hunk sticking up somewhere. Yeah, there it wants to fight me going up through there at that slow of a speed. Still have more bark to remove. I'll go up here and straighten this up so that we can get the speed up a little bit. There over to the top. Definitely going to lose some because right there there's a little bit of the pith going through there. So this is going to be a sort of a shallow, sort of a very shallow bowl actually. So I should probably just kind of mark that around and just figure on just getting rid of that all the way around because it's going to do me no good. If I leave it there, it'll just crack and cause me other problems. There's sort of a almost a little valley where it went through there anyhow. And it's going to let me get through some of the vibration. Okay. So now we know where we're going to go to. I got a little bit overzealous on where we went. Better to put a little extra on the floor than waste the time to turn it and try and dry it and it doesn't work anyhow. Get rid of the things we don't want. We don't want the bark. At least I don't want the bark, put it that way. So piggy. This thing has some nice color to it though, some reds and kind of an unusual bit of cherry there. See if I can make it a bit of an OG shape now. Of course not, there's still bark there, you dummy. Not much of it left though. Guess it'd be also a good idea to mark a tenant. It always stop up there, flip over, take it straight in with just the wing. Probably a better way to do it, especially if the wood is dry. This is not, but if it was. It's really way too big of a flat area in there, but it's going to be a rough turn bowl. Reaching in there. The other thing I actually have a parting tool that's ground at sort of the dovetail angle. So if I match up the flat and go in on a flat area. It gives you a nice flat area in there, as well as the proper sort of dovetail. If I can get behind that little critter. Yep. Just sort of blend that back in a little bit. I lost my shape there a little bit on that one. I mentioned that gouge is getting dull. Cutting through all the bark doesn't do it any favors. So if we raise the tool rest up just a little bit, I think a little bit, we can go back to the other scraper. Not that we really need to on a rough turn green bowl, but got it, so might as well try it. Use it a little bit, see what it does with the wet. It usually doesn't, there'll usually be some places it doesn't particularly care for. Although this piece didn't seem to make a difference. And also go back and do the shear scraping move with it. This is what I would use a lot of times when it's once the wood is dry. Maybe you don't get quite as clean of a cut or too many little bumps and lumps and whatnot. That little shear scraper like that does a wonderful job. Like everything else, it's not catch free. When it's up on its side, now they use it more closer to just up off there. I'm up pretty far up. I've never had it catch on anything. You have to watch when you get down in here that you can get back in here and catch on a tenon or something like that. Then it wouldn't be a good scenario. It'll give us a nice little center point in there as well. That seems to be about the right size drill bit though. The only thing is I'm going to have to, I think I have probably like 3 or 4 of these. I think this thing could use cut off maybe there or there. That's just a little bit, to me that's more than what you, and it's pretty much all them people that use them. And that's an inch and, that's end of an inch and 3/8 long, which most of the people that use the worm screws don't don't want that super long of one. It's definitely a tenon that won't fit whenever that uh, bowl is dry. It's almost a perfect tenon. There's less than 1/8 of an inch between the gap in there. I think we're going to need a longer tool rest, which is great if the wood is dry. I mean, that's what I generally go for. Okay, let's use the, we use this Trent Bosch super long tool rest, asymmetric tool rest, I guess you'd say, is what it is. It's very long. This is actually the longest tool rest I own. That's kind of why I bought it from him. I wanted to try his asymmetric. Of course, the only downfall of it is this is Laguna, so you got to be careful. You got to really tighten it down because it's not their idea of 1 inch and everybody else's idea of 1 inch is not the same. So do I have any? I probably don't have any edge left on that. So let's go sharpen the. This is the 5/8 one. This is the one that I'm sharpening. Working on learning how to sharpen freehand, but I have, especially with a 5/8, I have a real trouble keeping the wing straight. But we'll go give it a little whirl. And this one also hasn't been ground that many times. I don't know. I don't even have all the sort of the sweat back part of it going yet. That's also why it's making it look like it's curved, but it's not. Better. Each time you do it, you get it, keep getting a little bit better. Definitely wants a very short bevel. The short bevel really makes them cut very, very cleanly. You can even do that with um, I just saw a thing with Matt Monaco. I actually saw him demonstrate last January, and he talked a lot about that, the micro bevel and the straight wings on this. And I'm like, well, it does the same thing if it's traditional swept-back wings too. Is that yeah, it probably would. Like you're kind of really not talking about real rocket science, but just flatten it out a bit. And now we're going to waste a whole bunch of material here. That's the fun part of the 5/8 gouges, though. You can take a hunk and big cut. Of course, the tool rest doesn't like quite that big a cut, but also would help. There we go. So we'll clean up a little area out here, just so we know where we're going and where we're going to be fairly flat. Put it that way. And we'll get rid of the middle. Try and keep them from going to what would appear to look like it's going to be hitting you in the face. You should do that more often. That's easier to pick them up, put them on the floor. Felt like it was pretty close. Maybe a little more meat. Fingers do lie when it comes to that. If it was a finished turn bowl and you run I run my fingers in there like that, you can always get it close enough. Make sure you're getting very close to where we want to be all the way around. A little bit further down before we go around. Sharp edge there gone. And also, if you really wanted to, you can bring the tool rest in, even though it really doesn't do you any good because the tool's still going to end up out here. But as it goes across center, it's going to give it a little bit more support. Don't want to break the center point out, even even though this is wet wood turning, you want to try and develop the habits and stick with those habits. That's pretty much right where we need it. Tiny bit thicker right there in the dead center, probably because of the tenon down there. The curve feels half decent. Okay. We could make that a little bit better if we have any edge left on our little 1/2 inch one. And you know what? In 1 short second, we'll just put a fresh edge on that one. I think I'm sort of getting a little bit of a hang to doing the freehand ones. Freehand sharpening, and we're gonna be okay. This down in this area here. And then pick the cut up. Run the sweep the whole way to the center. That's good. That feels much better. I mean, there's some little ridges in there, don't get me wrong. I don't get them that there's no ridges in there. That is what they make sandpaper for eventually. But of course, the cleaner we can get it before that time, the better off it is. Don't like to create myself extra work, but it is what it is. One of these days I have to get some big wood out to do the, because this is, like I say, this is the asymmetric one from Tret Boss. Are you going to tell me I left it over on the grinder? Yeah, sorry. Make sure you yelled at me. So it's, I guess it's 13 inches. Yeah, 13 inches long, and there's roughly about 7.5 of it to the right side of the post. So it will allow you to get down into a deeper bowl. At least that's kind of the, I guess you'd want to call the advertisement of it. Um, here, there. That's what the inside looks like. My apologies. I haven't I haven't done that in a while, but this is number 6, I guess. So we're gonna call it a day. We got a pretty good mountain of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 6 of them. 2 hours and 20 minutes worth. Enough for an old man. Anybody have any questions, comments? Go back there. Otherwise, I think we'll call it an evening and clean up this knee-high polished crap in my feet. I think we can get wide enough to actually get them all on. So there's the 2 flat ones. And 4 little natural edge ones started. Yeah, we got it all on. So that was our adventure for the evening. And we should be back next Saturday. Unless I decide to do something of interest tomorrow night. Don't know. Um, but until then, y'all have a good evening, wonderful week. If I don't get back tomorrow, like I say, it's probably, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. I am off tomorrow, but no. Okay. We're going to call it an evening.